Wolfenstein has certainly come a long way since its platforming debut in 1981 and is known for being one of the first true 3D first-person shooters. It has seen many installments since its first release in the early 80s, and this newest release, Wolfenstein: The New Order, is the first title for the next-gen systems. From battling robot dogs to electrically charged Nazis, you're bound to have some fun in this intense first-person shooter. One aspect of the game we were really impressed with was the amount of effects in the game and how well they're implemented. There are really some nice particle effects. For example, look at the floating dust particles that spin around this old garage. And having these types of small effects in the game really help immerse the player and create a more realistic experience. And another great example of some nice effects can be found in the building destruction and the cement and dust that gets kicked up as enemy bullets hit around you. Check this shot out as we take a step back and you can see the bullets whizzing by and hitting their mark on the cement wall. Or in this shot as we walk across this old wooden bridge and the enemies begin shooting from below and the bridge actually splits apart and cracks and even some of the wood planks break off. And on top of the great destruction effects, there were also some really great lens effects as you can see here, and not to mention a few nice god rays, which we're always suckers for. When it came to the lighting, there were some great uses of dynamic lighting, and the devs were able to blend both baked and dynamic lighting together almost seamlessly. Being able to utilize baked lighting and do it in a way where you can't tell the difference is a vital technique to master. We also really like some of the subtle lighting effects. In this shot, we're running through the storage room of the plane, and you can see these small beams of light breaking through the bullet holes in the side of the plane, and then the overhead lamps illuminating the path into the plane's cockpit. These subtle touches can really go a long way. While a lot of the lighting was well done, we did notice some strange shadow issues in a couple of places. For example, take a look at this shot. If you look at the corner there, you can see the enemy's shadow actually going straight through the wall. Now this is great for us because we can see exactly where the enemy is, but it's definitely not something you want to have in your game. Along with some of the issues with the shadows, you can actually see an example of the ragdoll physics in the game and some of the problems we found with it. As you can see, the dog lands and sort of gets stuck in this position, and we found this happen quite a bit with some of the enemy NPCs as well. It seems like there needs to be enough room for the ragdoll physics to work properly, and if there isn't enough space, the enemy will typically get stuck in a weird position by some type of invisible barrier. We also found that there just wasn't really many objects you could interact with in the game. For example, we try to shoot out this standing light here, but nothing happens. And not only did the bullet not shatter the light, but the light actually stands completely still and doesn't move an inch. Something as obvious as this light source standing in the middle of this hallway, you'd expect to be able to interact with it, shoot it out, or at least move it somehow, but instead it's glued to the ground. When it came to the environment modeling, there's a great level of set dressing and small details that went into the environment that really helped bring it all together, making it feel like a lived-in world. But overall, the models were pretty low resolution, and many props and environment pieces were pretty faceted. Of course, with the amount of set dressing that went into the game, it's understandable to need lower resolution geometry, but the poly count seemed a little too conservative. Now, the environment texturing in the game was actually able to hide some of these low resolution geometry pieces. You can see in this shot how a lot of the smaller details like bolts were created in the texturing. Now, the texturing for the most part was extremely well done in the game. However, we did notice a few instances where there seemed to be repeated textures. For example, in this shot, we're climbing up this castle wall, and if you pay close attention to the wood window that covers it, you can see all of them have the exact same texture applied. If we pause it right here, you can see the white splotches on the wood. As we continue climbing up, you can see the same splotches on this window as well. The textures on all the windows are exactly the same. Now, this is not a big issue, and you're probably not going to notice as you're fighting off the enemies that pop out of these windows, but even so, when having to reuse the same textures for objects, it can go a long way simply to rotate them or flip them to add a little variation. Now, one really impressive aspect of both the modeling and texturing of the characters is actually in the enemy NPCs. You can see from this shot the amount of detail that went into both the texturing and modeling of the enemies. From his face mask to his chest piece, everything looked great. And we also really like the character design. One moment you're fighting Nazis, the next you're fighting robot dogs, and then there's this guy. Not sure what he is, but you definitely wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley, that's for sure. Oh, and we don't want to forget him. Alright, that's just creepy. Let's cut to a different shot before that guy scars us for life. The game cutscenes were very well done and had a nice cinematic feel to them, with some really great cinematography as well. We also really liked the fact that the game's cutscenes were for the most part third person, which is a nice breakaway from the first person view, and it gave you a whole new perspective on the character you play. The HUD in the game is very minimal, as you can see. There's a health and armor indicator at the bottom of the screen here, and then there's ammo on the right, but we felt it was just too minimal and didn't provide enough information, and there was also no minimap anywhere on the HUD. First you had to find the map in the game, and then pull it up on the screen when you needed it. This works for some games, but for a fast-paced first-person shooter, having to pull up the map every time you wanted to see where you needed to go was a disruption of the gameplay and pulled you out of the experience. The way the map is used in Wolfenstein is something you would expect to find in an MMO and not a first-person shooter. So in any FPS, you're going to run low on ammo. That is, of course, if you miss as much as we did. And the best way to get more ammo is to pick it up off the enemies you just took down. However, picking up health and ammo could have been a lot easier. You'd expect to simply walk over it, and it would be in your inventory. This is something first-person shooters do because it keeps up that fast-paced gameplay, but in Wolfenstein you must walk over the ammo, wait till the indicator pops up on screen, and then choose to pick it up. Having to choose if you want to pick up ammo, health, or armor seems very strange, since there's really no reason at all why you wouldn't want to pick it up. And we found ourselves clearing a room of enemies and then spending a few minutes running around trying to make sure we picked up all the ammo. This causes the fast-paced gameplay to come to a complete stop. Now, even with some of these issues that slowed the gameplay down, Wolfenstein: The New Order is still an enjoyable first-person shooter with some very unique enemies to fight, which keeps the game interesting. And if you can bear having to run into this guy a few times, you'll be sure to have some fun playing it. If you haven't already, be sure to add us on Xbox Live or PlayStation Network with the gamertag Digital-Tutors.